Testing. Okay.
Test one.
Lisa and Jeremy. I'll do thank you. Ready. Welcome to Storm Aware and Prepare. Very valuable information for homeowners, and we will be talking about several things today. Our goal is to help you learn about hurricane preparation, remediation, the repair process, how to navigate claims with your insurance companies, whether they're new claims or old claims. I want to give a very big thank you to Lisa and Jeremy Thompson from West Villages Home Watch, who brought us to our venue today. Thank you for your hard work. My name is Diane Pisani of the Home Watch Academy, and I'm truly an educator and advocate, as well as what everybody on this panel is today. We're here to teach you things you don't know, because I believe that you don't know what you don't know until you know what you don't know. And with that, it's my pleasure to introduce our panel. They'll tell you their names, their business, and a little bit about them. I would love to start with Harvey Cohen, attorney. Take it away, Harvey.
Thank you. Thank you all for having me here. My name's Harvey Cohen. I have a law firm called Cohen Law Group, and we are statewide. We work anywhere in the state of Florida. We have probably 250 employees now and about 70 or 80 attorneys, so we really go everywhere and help people with their insurance claims. We've been in business for over 20 years. We were talking earlier about Google reviews. We have almost 600 now Google reviews, and we try so hard to make sure we take care of our clients and live up to the expectations that they give us. We handle any type of insurance claim, no matter how big or how small, and it's just an honor to be here with you all today.
Thank you so very, very much. We have Paul Clark from Renegade Roofing and Storm Consultants.
Hello, everybody. It's great to be here with Harvey and Ken Ciders and with everybody here. What we do is we come out here to help educate regarding the storms and how to make sure everybody's safe and what to do. The one thing with Ken and Harvey is we put a team together, so we all act as a team trying to help the property owners become whole again after a storm and make sure they're safe in doing so. A big thing that we do is with Renegade is we're also a general contractor, so we can take care of all the repairs for the client so they don't have to go and get 5 different contractors to do their jobs. That's the big thing that we do, is that we take care of this. I've also used to be an insurance adjuster and a public adjuster in my past life. I've been doing this 25 years. So with the team atmosphere, I understand what Harvey's team needs when we put a packet together for Harvey and the client. Same thing with Ken. He's part of that team as well. And Ken will tell you what he does. But that's the big thing with Renegade Roofing and Construction, is we're a team. We do all the work for the client. We also have a company called Storm Consultants, and our Storm Consultants is we'll go and consult with HOAs, attorneys, general contractors, other roofers, architects, engineers. We even do that for public adjusters as well on their cases. And what we do is we put a packet together. We advise the client of where they need to go, when we need to get Harvey involved, when we need to get Ken involved, and when we need to, and also we do reports. If you need a roof report done, we'll go do the inspection. Same thing with, all the building as a general contractor, we can do that. That's all I got.
For now. Thank you so much, Paul. Ken Ciders is a senior forensic assessor and managing director of ETA. Ken, tell us a little bit about you and your business.
So environmental testing and assessment is about looking at a home or a commercial building as a whole. When damage happens to a home or a commercial building, it's our job to find out not only what the damage is, but how it was caused, trace it back to its inception, it may be point of loss, and not only fix the problem, but fix the reason for the problem. I'm an old country boy, and there's a saying that says you need to fix the fence before you put the pig back in the pen. So it's our thought that we need to have this house whole and well from outside influences, the damage is fixed, so that whatever environmental issues have happened in the home don't happen in the home again once we leave. We create very detailed and thick, I'll tell you, reports on buildings that talk about what we found, that talk about the reason that it's there, and talk about how it can be fixed. Our reports are useful to homeowners, to public adjusters, and especially to lawyers. And we'll talk a little bit about that more in a minute.
That's wonderful. And we'll also be taking questions from the audience, so if you have a question that's on topic, raise your hand. We'll be happy to take that from you. I believe everything in life is kind of before, during, and after, so I would like to have the panelists tell us a little bit about preparation before the storm. And we're speaking both to the folks that are here year-round, but also our seasonal homeowners, so they know what to do. Who would like to start on storm prep?
So I'll start on that. So
Okay.
you have to think about what happens after the storm before you get your head around what should happen before the storm. I've been doing this 22 years, and I've seen every flavor of disaster. And the common theme is homeowners and asset owners say, oh, I wish I had have. I wish I had have documented all of my personal belongings. I wish I would have documented the building so that someone doesn't say later that was pre-existing damage. So document your properties, document them frequently, document them before storm season. Have an accurate inventory of what you may or may not lose in a storm, because it's very hard to recreate that after a storm or after a fire or after a flood. You're way behind the 8 ball when that happens. So that is the first and most important thing that I think should happen.
So some of the woulda, coulda, shouldas. Do it in advance. Absolutely. Paul?
Yeah, to go further on what Ken's, talking about here is what I try to, teach our partners and property owners and business owners is every year we know hurricane season starts on June 1st. And so what I try to tell everybody is around June 1st, start documenting the things that you have, especially after we just had Hurricane Ian. You want to document repairs that you've had done. You want to document showing, if you haven't had the repairs done, how you're mitigating the damages. So if another hurricane hits, that you've showed that you've tried to stop more damage from happening. So that is another big thing that I think needs to happen with the documentation process. Another big thing is, if you got an Excel spreadsheet, or get a spreadsheet. If you got some valuables in your house, you need to document, and it's called contents. You need to document that stuff, age, value, because if you get a storm and that comes, the insurance company is going to ask you for that stuff if you want to be reimbursed for it. A lot of people don't know that they get reimbursed for their contents and stuff. Harvey can go deeper into other stuff that you guys can get reimbursed for that a lot of people don't understand. But those are, some of the key things on, what happens after the storm. Another thing that I'd talk about after the storm is there's, some major things that you need to have done. And one, after a storm, if you've got leaks, you need someone to come and do tarping your roof or shrink wrap your roof. You've got debris removal companies that you've got to be able to partner with, and that's one of the things with storm consultants. We have those partners. Also, you need to make sure that you have a company like Ken's that does the protocols and does environmental testing, because if you have water intrusion, that's considered Category 3 water during a hurricane, and Ken will talk further on that. But that's another thing that you need to have done immediately after a storm. If you have water intrusion, you need to get an environmental test. And then you've got your restoration. companies that are coming in and tearing out any wet drywall. But there's steps to that, and one of the steps is you've got to make sure that your property is properly dried in before someone starts doing testing and someone starts doing restoration work. And then finally, you have Harvey's team, which we're a part of, and we help get you involved with Harvey to help you with your claims on your storm damage.
I'd add, that it's so important to get a good inventory, and the way to do it too, you need to do outside and inside, all your belongings, the structure, your roof, the fences. It's easy enough to just take your camera phone and go around your house and document everything, because we're here kind of talking about hurricane claims, but you might have a fire or a flood or something else that actually destroys your belongings, and you need to have documentation to prove that you actually had those. Another thing that I would add when it comes to contents is a lot of people think that, let's say their policy limit is $350,000, and they have a nice, wedding ring or diamond ring and a Rolex and all this other stuff, and they think, okay, well, I have $300,000 or $350 in policy limits. But a lot of times they'll have a certain exclusion for art or jewelry or things like that. So if you have things like that, you need to make sure you document them and talk to your insurance company. They might charge you a little bit more in premiums, but then you'll be covered in case you lose your diamond ring or you lose everything in a fire or something like that. So the before part in basics is inventory. The other thing that I would say the before part is that you need to check your own insurance policy. What's in there? Did you review it? Have you talked to any, professionals about what you should have or what you might have? We've seen cases before where we come into a claim where there's $50 million in coverage and there's only $10,000 in mold coverage. And so what happens in those cases is if you hire the wrong experts and don't, hire like a team of people that kind of write roadmaps for each other, is somebody might come in and say, okay, well, we need to do $1 million worth of mold remediation. And the insurance company is going to say, we agree 100%. Here's $10,000. That's all you're going to get. And so that's why it's important to know what is in your policy. And that's the before part.
You can't talk about before without talking about insurance policies. When people are doing their property condition report, even getting serial numbers on their appliances is a good idea. And for the seasonal people that are out there, I can't not address this. Empty your refrigerators, people. Empty the refrigerators. You're not going to use that food 6 months later when you come back, and a lot of damage can happen. There could be a ton of contamination if there's food left. And if you have a good home watch, certified home watch reporter, they'll take care of that. And you can also ask your home watcher to do a condition report. If anybody wakes up in the morning thinking that the insurance companies wake up also getting ready to pay claims, you might be mistaken. And I've learned through the years a lot about exclusions, and somehow it seems like there's more exclusions than there are things that are covered. Could that possibly be true, Harvey?
Yes, that could definitely be true. Some of the things that we see, especially more and more lately, insurance companies are selling policies that have tons of exclusions. One of the ones that I love to mention that people can't believe this is even true is that in Florida, we have policies here that exclude water damage. So no matter what, right? A pipe breaks, anything, some water moisture gets in your house, any of that stuff, it's excluded. Zero. You get zero for a pipe break, but guess what they have coverage for? Volcano. So here in Florida,
I'm so glad for that.
Thank goodness we have volcano coverage, right? And but I've seen things like that, and sometimes like that seems ridiculous, but it's true. And I've seen wind exclusions where they literally just say there's no wind coverage. So you think you have coverage for your property, but you don't. And that's so important to make sure you know what is in your policy. Another big one, especially for communities, is ACV versus RCV. Your coverage, what that means is there's one type of policy that has what's called replacement cost value, RCV, and that means no matter how old your roof is, the insurance company owes you for a brand new roof at today's prices. ACV, actual cost value, means they owe you how much it costs, for your roof with all the depreciation over the years. So if you have a 20-year-old roof and it's supposed to last 20 years, how much is it worth now? Probably not so much. But those are little nuggets that I like to tell people. Make sure that you check your insurance policies and know what you have going on in there.
And if you're trying to read your own policy, you almost have to have, be able to look up all the terms on Google. So are there people that can help a homeowner read their policy? Is that your agent, or who should help you with that?
Definitely your agent, and talk to them. So many people ask me, can you review our policies? I'm happy to go over things, but I don't know what's going on with your personal, policies, but your agent does and should help you find the best policies. Sometimes, listen, I see it all the time. People are trying to save a little bit of money, and I understand that, but the coverage difference in that amount of money that you're saving is never worth it.
Part of my common sense brain says if you're talking to the insurance agent, it's like, would you explain all of the exclusions to me? And then welcome the opportunity to make an additional purchase if it will protect you in the big picture.
Great. That's a great idea.
One of the things I would touch base further on that is we're talking about before the storm is, like Harvey said, you should go to your agent and make sure that you're covered for the correct things. And one of the things I'd like to touch base for everybody for knowledge is, what are those things in your policy that you should have? I can tell you a couple instances I've seen in this past storm that I haven't seen before, where either you had a non-recoverable depreciation policy or recoverable. I have a client that he has a recoverable depreciation on his whole policy except for his roof. So again, insurance companies are doing stuff that they're not telling people about a lot of times, or you don't know. The wind-driven rain thing, I've seen a lot of that after Irma. A couple insurance companies were no longer covering wind-driven rain. I don't know if you know what that is, but wind-driven rain is hurricane rain, because that's considered wind-driven rain. So
And that comes sideways, doesn't it?
correct. And our vents on our roofs are engineered for your rain to come down and vertically. It's not, going this way. So what the insurance companies did is said, okay, well, we don't want to pay for this wind-driven rain. Let's take wind-driven rain out of the policies. So I think one of the things that we should talk about real quick is, it would be helpful for you guys, is what are the things that should be in your policy? And I can name a couple, and if these gentlemen will, chime in with me. One is ALE, additional living expense. You should have the ALE money in case you get displaced from your property, so you have another place, so you can go and live somewhere else, and while your repairs are getting done, your insurance covers what's called ALE. Another thing that you want to make sure is you have a recoverable depreciation policy, because if you have a non-recoverable depreciation policy, then you don't get that money back, and they depreciate. And this gentleman I was just speaking about with his roof, they depreciated his roof 60%. So you want to make sure those things. Harvey, I know there's more that we could probably let them know when they go see their agent to request.
One of the biggest things that we see, and we get a lot of questions from the community, is that what does this mean, right to repair or preferred vendor programs? And that is like a great question for your agent. If you're signing up, and you need to say, does this policy give me the right to choose whoever I want to come in and work on my house, whoever I want to be inside my house with my family and so on? That you want to have that choice to decide who you prefer, not who the insurance company prefers. And some policies are written that you don't have a choice at all. Some insurance companies actually own their own restoration companies and roofing companies. And so you sign up with them, and then they send out their own people to do the roof. And trust me, they're not trying to take care of you and do the best job in the world. They're trying to do it for, as fast and as cheap as they can to save money. That's a big one, though, the right to repair and preferred vendor.
So I'd like to touch on that same subject. It's important to have a third party help you with this. And what do I mean by third party? That means a party that is not loyal to the insurance company. This right to repair business that's popped its ugly head up in the last few years has caused more consternation in this industry than just about anything. I went through Hurricane Michael. I live in Panama City. And I saw right to repair being exercised, and it was horrendous. The amount of work after that was done was almost more than it was before, because many of the jobs were not done, A, to code, B, to the protocol that was written, if there was a protocol, and C, some of them just simply weren't finished because they only get paid a certain amount. Remember, they're going to have a contract with the insurance company. It's like the silly 3-day drying myth that's circulated its way around the world for years. And just if you don't know what that is, some people believe that any structure can be dried out in 3 days. I can tell you from 22 years of personal experience, that's completely bogus. I'm not saying it's not possible in some structures. I'm saying that all structures are not the same, therefore all drying strategies are not the same. But insurance companies often only want to pay for 3 days of drying. So they have their preferred vendor come in, set up drying, hopefully according to the S520 and the S500, which are the Bibles of this business. And when 3 days is done, they're done because there's no more money. That is an inadequate and improper way to dry a building, which leads to more damage in the end. And then if you do have more damage, guess what? Then they want to bring their preferred vendor back. So my suggestion in this is always have a third party, a company like ours or ours, come into your property and assess it in an unbiased way to say, here's how the water got in, or here's how the contamination got in, or here's whatever the case may be. Here's the remedy according to the Bibles of our business, if you will. And here's what any remediator or any contractor that's working on your property should do according to the standards. Once that happens, if it's written properly, because words matter, if it's written properly and it's performed properly, you'll have a good result, which is pre-storm condition, which is what we all want.
What I love about the panel so far is that if you're here in the audience and taking notes, that's great. We're recorded. You're taking notes. You're getting, jargon and everything. And imagine sitting next to your, insurance guy and say, well, what about the ALE? I want you to tell me about that. And of course, we're focusing on storms, but I think of folks that live in high rises. When you get a flood from above because somebody didn't turn their water off when they were up north, you will get displaced if you live there, or the seasonal homeowner. This is not just storm stuff. It's focused on storms, but it's any kind of damage. Yes.
I would like, I'm sorry, just a quick comment on floods. So I'm currently involved in a job I obviously won't name, but it's a rather high rise. My customer is on the 4th floor, and he's been flooded from the 9th floor down.
Yep.
So what happens when water filters through a building, older building, those components filters through the walls, the interstitial spaces which never get cleaned, and finally filter down to my customer's kitchen on the 4th floor?
It's icky water.
It is icky water, and we have a technical term for that, and that's category 2 or 3 water. So that water is full of all kinds of contaminants. Category 3 water has the ability to literally make you sick. Category 2 water has the possibility of making you sick. And for us old timers out there, we used to call it gray and black water. And so that's a reference if you know what that is. So why is that important? Well, a little bit of water comes down, and the customer mops it up, and maybe he has a 1/4 inch of water on his kitchen floor, which is where our food is prepared. And they called us in as a caution. Well, when we ran our test, we found bacteria. We found E. coli and coliforms. These are sewer indicators in his kitchen, covering his counters and covering his floor, covering his wine rack, covering his food. So it's important to understand the cause and effect of these things.
Thanks for saying cause and effect, because that's something that we all have to do in our careers, is look at the whole picture. I appreciate that. Paul, I know you're ready.
Well, I wanted to touch base back again on the right to repair thing. I've dealt with this right to repair since Hurricane Irma. An insurance company I won't name, we had a client, an 80-some-year-old gentleman. He had this insurance company. They were giving him a runaround, kept denying the claim, and finally we got hired and got involved. And so we started talking with the insurance company back then, and the insurance company gave a verbal saying, okay, we'll let you guys do the work. Well, they said that because they had already been out there and they didn't think there was any damage. They didn't do a thorough inspection. So what happened is, this was a tile roof. The tile was not made anymore. The HOA sent a letter saying they will not allow mismatched tiles in their neighborhood because it brings the property values down, and it can be unsafe if it's not the correct tile. Also went and we did this work, went and got the letter from the manufacturer that gave a letter stating that it is unsafe to use mismatched tiles if it's not the same locking channel because they don't lock in properly. So with those letters, we went back to the insurance company and had to do an appraisal. So we get an appraisal, comes, and now we couldn't come to an agreement. So before the umpire comes, what we ended up doing is going and hiring an uplift test company to come and do an uplift. And I don't know, most people don't understand this, but on tile, most uplift companies are going to tell you if your tile lifts more than 2 inches, it failed the uplift test. So this tiles were just coming off. Some weren't attached anymore. And so the umpire's like, yeah, this roof should have been approved a long time ago. Well, now let's go to the settlement comes in. And now the insurance company says, and this is a big thing that you got to make sure, get everything in writing.
Yep.
Nope, we're not doing it, even though we have it on verbal. And it fought us tooth and nail. And then finally said, okay, we'll let you do the work. What's your estimate? I said, well, the estimate is the exactimate. We agreed on this price. Oh, well, we're not paying you that. So where I'm going with this is you need to make sure you have a team. Make sure you have a great, and when I mean great, a great insurance agent. And if you don't have one of those, reach out to somebody that you know and ask those questions. And again, it goes, I'm going to beat this till I can, like a drum. Team. You've got to make sure you have the correct team members that are looking out for your best interest. And the policy, and it starts with your agent. That's where it's going to start. And then from there, it's going to work its way.
To repeat the question a little bit, when it comes to the homeowners and their challenges, it's the who pays who, and that's a great question.
And that can go a couple different ways. Typically, our team will come out and do an assessment with you. After the damage, you call us up and say, and we'll come out, and then from there I can advise you. Now, I'm going to do a free inspection for you, where I'm going to look at the damages and then be able to advise you what to do at that point. If it's calling Harvey, if it's calling Ken, if I have to call a tarping company or my company to come and do tarping. It depends on where you're at. Now, typically how it gets paid, Hurricane Ian claims, and Harvey can talk further about how that gets paid. But for our team, if we're doing all the work, it gets paid through the insurance company. We don't charge you anything for that portion. We're trying to get you back to whole by getting the work done through your insurance that you have on your property. Our company is one of those companies that we guarantee to do the work for what the insurance company pays. The only out-of-pocket money ever to our clients is your deductible, if you want any upgrades, or if there's something that the insurance company didn't pay for, then we have to have a discussion. Now, I will Ken has a little different on what he does, and then the big thing is the team again. I try to get Harvey involved because Harvey can explain what portion of his team will take on paying for certain things, because it's a little bit of a complex question or answer, I should say, because my team's going to come and do what I just told you. We guarantee to do the work for what the insurance company paid. But if the insurance company gives kickback, that's immediately when I give it to Harvey, and then Harvey's team takes it from there.
roofers in the past have played games with the insurance company. And you got me a little bit nervous where you say, I will take care of it. Are you taking care of it in the way I'm hoping you are, or the way that we ended up getting into this high-cost situation?
So that's a great question. The reason that you guys, everybody out there hears that's the roofers is a misconception. That's the media. The reason that they attack the roofers is because you get companies coming from Texas, Missouri, wherever they come from. And they come here and they start doing work because they are under the misconception, oh, you just have to be a licensed contractor to work in the state of Florida. That's the furthest thing from the truth. You have to be a licensed, state licensed contractor in the state of Florida. So if you look at the way we've all been attacked, I've been attacked as a contractor. Now the attorneys are being attacked. But you want to know who's being attacked at the end of the day? It's the property owners. Yep. You guys are all losing out. Some of the bills that DeSantis has passed, and I'm not trying to get political, but are making the property owners suffer. They're making it look like they're making us suffer because we're the bad guys, but we're not. And I will tell you this, and everybody knows this in life, there's good and bad in every industry. There's good and bad contractors, there's good and bad public adjusters, there's good and bad insurance agents, there's good and bad attorneys. We all know that, and that's why we do these classes and education forums, because we're the good guys. We want you to be educated on when you pick a team to do things, to do them correctly. Now, yes, there is some contractors that went out there, and I could tell you why the misconception is what happens in this industry is contractors, and not so much Florida, but other states, because other states you don't have to have a contractor's license. So these storm companies will go out and they'll hire 30 sales guys, and these guys will work for them for 6 months in a year, and they'll say, oh, well, I can do this because I don't need a license. I just need a DBA and get me a corporation. Those are the guys that then get themselves in trouble because they take deposits and can't do the work. Those ones run it up. In the state of Florida, the fraud that you typically see in the state of Florida is guys using somebody's license or coming down here and not having a license.
Pretty much everyone on my street who needed repairs of any type, we kind of all agreed, hire nobody who doesn't have a business in the state of Florida. Is that pretty much a safe way to go?
Yeah, so what I tell people is look at a couple things. One, if you have a referral from somebody, but a Google review is huge nowadays. Look at their company. Look at their license. You can go on the Department of Florida Financial Services and pull up contractors' licenses. Look and see how long they've been in business for. Look and see if there's any dings on there. But look at the Google ads. Look at Better Business Bureau. Those are the things that I want to tell you to look at. Now, to be a licensed contractor in the state of Florida, it takes you almost a year to get your license typically, and there's a lot of hoops that we have to jump through to get your GC and your contractor's license. The thing that I tell people is really interview people. And if you can get a referral, that's the best way of doing it. But the biggest problem in Florida where you get the out-of-state people is someone that's coming and they do what's called a leasing of somebody's license, which is illegal. They're not supposed to be doing it, but you get companies that come and say, I've got 30 guys, and I'm going to promise you X amount of dollars, and this contractor is, going along, and he's making whatever he makes every year, but now he sees the stars because he can make $1 million this year by leasing out his license. Those are the companies that you want to be careful of. And the only way you're going to tell who they are is by interviewing them. And again, by us getting this out here and we talk about our team, we can refer each other, and that's what this team is about.
And that was a great question. Collectively, we've all seen homeowners be taken advantage of in a number of ways, and that's our passion here for the education part. And I love that Paul says to interview several people. So I in my world, I call it the rule of 3. Interview a few different companies. Maybe things are equal, and then you choose whoever you connect with the best. We're giving you great interview questions here. Yes, darling.
I hear you. I agree with you to a smaller extent.
Okay.
But under the situation that the hurricane has just devastated
Yeah.
an area, everybody's after contractors as fast as they can. Firstly, my way to go about it
Agree
So-
wholeheartedly, because people should be getting their contractors in gear now.
And the one thing that I say be careful with is again, if somebody's leasing somebody out, and you're not going to know that unless you interview that company, you'll find out. They come in here, and I'm not saying this all the time, but they come in here and they're fast talking. You don't want fast talking. You want education talking. I tell everybody this: our company, we don't sell a thing. We offer you a service, and if our service aligns with your values, then that's the customer that we want. I tell everybody in business and in life, you get to pick your customers, and the customers gets to pick you, and it's off of values. And the other thing you have to be careful, and I will say this, and the reason I say this is because I see it happen all the time. Even if they're a licensed roofer in the state, I see people coming from Jacksonville coming down here, and I've had this happen with a couple clients, and they signed up a bunch of people after the storm. They finally are just getting the roofs done, but they have a warranty issue. It's taking that roofer 3 months to get down there to have someone do their warranty work. So you also have to be careful about that type of stuff. So again, you made a good point. You want to hire someone that's local.
One last question directed to we all live in mostly in our homes here. Okay? You know what kind of roofs we have. How should these roofs last? How long should these roofs last?
So that's a good question. I tell you, in most places, a tile roof lasts approximately 50 years, 30 to 50 years. In the state of Florida, and I let Harvey talk about this a little bit, typically the insurance companies will come to you with a tile roof and say, oh, your roof's about 25 years old. It's time to looking at getting a new roof around 25 to 30 years on tile. On shingle roofs, they come to the homeowners around 15 years and say, hey, your roof is 15 years old. It's end of expectancy here because of weathering, sun, weather, and all that stuff. When a typical shingle roof is supposed to last, in most other climates, 30 years. So, again, Florida is a different animal than most states. And again, why you want to hire someone local that has the knowledge. But your typical tile roof, when the insurance company is going to come to you for life, is around 25 to 30 years. My opinion, if it's installed properly and you don't go through hurricanes and windstorms, then you might get your longer longevity out of that roof. But because we get so much weathering, it's going to be probably on a tile roof somewhere around 25 to 30 years.
Is this a gimmick that insurance companies are now saying that if the roof is 5 years old, it's now considered an older home? And in many cases, certain insurance companies not write you a policy?
I haven't heard that. Harvey, have you?
Just to speak on that, so they passed a law last year that basically said an insurance company cannot drop you or non-renew you is what they do, right? So they don't drop you. They just go, we're not going to renew your policy next year. They can't do that solely based on the age of your roof. So if they do say something like that, like if they come in and say you have to replace your roof or we're not going to renew you or anything to that effect, you can actually go and have Paul come out and do an inspection on your roof and show that your roof has, if it does have more than 5 years of useful life, then you get a report like that and give it to the insurance company, and then they can't, non-renew you or. Mm-hmm. Okay, let's not talk. Let's just talk in general about. Okay, there's an insurance company. Right. Okay, and that's something different. You're right. Yes. So that is something different, and obviously, insurance companies can, they're just like what Paul was saying. Just because you want to hire them, that doesn't mean they're gonna, serve you or write you a policy. So it's up to them to make their own guidelines of how they do that. But they're not supposed to. They pass a lot of good laws about the non-renewal stuff. Oh, yes, sir.
Just a question on lead times for the team, because after Ian, it was virtually impossible to get any contractors in to even quote on anything. And meantime, probably 40% of the homes in here had water incursion coming through the roof vents. So people had ceilings collapse. They had water, and they were concerned about black mold, and you couldn't even get a hold of anybody, much less have them actually come out to assist. So I'm just wondering how you, after Ian, what the sort of lead times were, because that's key from perspective of a community like ours.
So I'll be happy to speak on that subject. It depends on who you know. I mean, it's like everything else in life. We had a team after Ian. By the way, I'm a native Floridian. I live in Panama City, Florida. We have office down here. We had a team that could service just about anything. We were on high-rises with hundreds of units. We did a lot of residential work. So in retrospect, if we didn't get to help your neighborhood, it's probably our fault. We didn't advertise well. We were busy like a lot of people. But you mentioned black mold. The important thing in the beginning of the restoration is to know what needs to be fixed and or removed prior to the rebuild. Without having a proper assessment, there's no way to know that. If you get a remediation company or a contractor that comes in and says, don't worry, we'll just rip out whatever's discolored, or don't worry, we got this under control, and you don't have a third party that's not, I mean, let's just face it, if a person writes his own scope of work, there's the appearance of evil. There's no getting around it. And so that's why you'll always hear me in these forums say that it's so important to have a third-party company that does what our company does. We're part of this team. We come in as a person that works for the asset owner, and we write realistic reports, realistic protocols that say what needs to be done. That process isn't long for us. In a normal residential home, we can be in and out of there in 2 or 3 hours or 4 hours, depending on the amount of work that needs to be done. And in 2 to 3 days, we can have a report that's complete, tabbed, ready for you to read, ready for your contractor to read, your remediator, your lawyer, your public adjuster. All of those things can be done, and they can be done very quickly and professionally. And that's one of the reasons that we as a team like to come and stand before people that are asset owners, so that they'll realize the next time that there's a way, that there's a clear path to recovery. And that not only is there a clear path, but there's a certain way that you should do it. I think you asked me if the insurance company covers my service. So that's a great question. I have a lot of people ask me that. So I'm going to ask Harvey to speak about cost incurred in a moment. But let's look at this. Let's take the money out of it for a minute. Whoever pays me is my boss. That's how this works in the world. Do you really want the insurance company being my boss? You don't. So the answer is, it will probably be covered if it's cost incurred. I'm not a lawyer. I'm not going to speak on that. But the most important thing is that you're the one that's driving the boat, that you have someone that's on your side that's not going to say, well, Mr. and Mrs. Jones, I'm sorry your house is so wet you could wring it out like a sponge, but we're just going to write for 3 days of drying, and after that, good luck. You need someone who will actually understand the process, that regardless of the insurance company, the contractor, or anyone else who stands to make money, must follow the protocol, or commonly known as scope of work, that's written by a third-party company. So that didn't exactly answer your question, but it shows the importance of who pays who.
I'll interject that it's mind-boggling sometimes how homeowners believe that they've been made whole, and nothing could be further from the truth.
And real quick, I want to back up to this gentleman's question earlier. A big thing where you said, 40% of the homes were damaged from water intrusion? That's, again, why we do these, so you can have a team and you have our contact info that you call us, we come, like Ken says. The first thing when you have water intrusion, we need to get Ken there. He needs to do a protocol. That is the correct way. And then from there, we can help assess, I can help assess the exterior and the rest of the damage, and that's when we can get Harvey involved. That's how the team works. And then asking your question about cost incurred on this, and Harvey can reiterate or he can speak of his knowledge, but we've seen again, I've been doing this 25 years, and there were storms where you better be careful on cost incurred. But this storm here, insurance companies have been paying more cost incurred than I've ever seen before. Harvey?
Speaking just on that, yeah, so I'm going to answer two questions. Generally, what happens when we get involved is me or my firm as the attorney, we can hire experts. So Ken or other engineers, we hire them and pay them on your behalf. You understand? Then when we go to settle the claim, obviously we need enough money to cover everything, all of our testing, all of our engineering reports, any expert reports, and fees and costs that we put into the claim to try to get everything reimbursed from the insurance company, but sometimes that will depend on your policy. And the other part to that, and I'll let you ask another question, but that the cost incurred is a stronger argument. For example, if you have an estimate for your roof and it's $85,000, but it's just an estimate, right? If you have a cost incurred, if Paul's put on a new roof for you and it's $85,000, well, guess what? It's $85,000. You owe your contractor $85,000, and the insurance company owes you the reimbursement minus your deductible. Yeah.
I like what you said. You made me feel that if I hire you, you're actually working for me.
100%.
Right. The gentleman in the center, the roofer person, you made me feel that way too. I think you do awesome work based on the description of what you do, but you make me a little bit nervous. And the reason you make me nervous is when I asked you that question and you said, if the insurance company is going to pay me, then I work for them. Well, I beg to differ, because the insurance company at that point, haven't I hired them? Aren't the insurance company working for me and you're working under them?
Honestly, people say that's a good question, but that's a really good question, and I'd like to explain that with a story. So there was a time 15 years ago that I worked for asset owners and insurance companies. I was at this house with this little old lady and little old man, and he was sick, and the reason he was sick was because his house was full of mold, and he had mold poisoning. So they had a little backup in their kitchen, and they had an island. And when I walked in the house, I knew there was an issue beyond the island, but I was working for the insurance company. So I called the desk adjuster and I said, we have a real problem here. There's a lot of mold in this house. And they said, that's fine, but you're only hired to test the island. So I did test the island. I did everything I was supposed to do, and I even explained it to the homeowner. I said, I'm sorry, I know you have a problem. I found out 2 months ago, 2 months after that incident, that gentleman died. I wasn't working for them. I couldn't go test them, the rest of the house. And I've never forgotten that. Had I done that, I don't know if it would have been different, but I know that I would have felt differently about it. So I don't work for insurance companies anymore. I don't work for them. I won't be paid by them. I can let you be reimbursed by them. That would be fine with me. But I can't, in good conscience, work for them knowing that they might inhibit something that I might be able to help you with in your home.
So Ken, your fees could be covered and reimbursed by the insurance company. That's what we were wondering.
I feel very, very comfortable with your answer, okay? The only thing I will say to the three of you is I've had my differences with insurance companies up north. And if I feel I'm being taken advantage of, I don't care who it is, I will go up against them. Up north, I had that situation. I went up against them, and essentially I won. And I guess what my message is, and because of my background running a large company, I don't get frightened from anybody. As long as somebody does the right thing and they're honest, I'm good to go. The three of you guys, you have different types of businesses. If, God forbid, I need to use you in the future, I would not hesitate.
Thank you.
One thing real quick I wanted to just touch base on is for Harvey and Ken and myself is, Ken, can you explain to everybody what the process is when Harvey, myself, or a homeowner or business owner brings you in, what the process is for you to do your testing and then who comes in next after? Because I think there's a huge misconception in our industry that, again, you hire restoration companies to come in and tear out. Can you explain why that's not the correct method? Because I think our community needs to know what the correct method is for water intrusion in floods into people's properties.
Sure. So, interestingly enough, we rarely get called first, our company. People understand that mold's a problem. They understand they want the problem fixed. They want their house built back so that it looks just like it did or better before the storm. But they don't understand that in that process, you need to have a third party writing the scope. So to speak to what we were talking about there with Paul, we get called in from a customer, usually a referral from a remediation or a contractor, or oftentimes a lawyer will hire us as an expert to go look. We begin with the exterior inspection of the home. We want to know if there are any storm-created openings, because wind-driven rain through storm-created openings is still covered because it's a storm-created opening. We want to know how the water got into the home. We want to know if the sewer backed up. We're going to have a customer interview that finds out how long was the power off. We're going to take accurate readings on the walls on the interior with infrared and moisture meters and manometers, and we have all kinds of interesting professional tools that we use to categorize what has happened to this building. It's important that we know what happened to the building because we can't write to fix it if we don't know that the problem is there. So once we thoroughly inspect the building, and when I say that, our people are in the attic, they're either droning or on the roof. If it's a raised structure, we're in the crawl space. Everywhere that you can get, and it's technically called easily accessible areas, every accessible area, we're going to look and photo document. The property itself on the interior is going to be 3D photo documented. Some people know about iGuides or Matterports. It's a way that at the end of the day, when Harvey's team gets all the reports, they can take this and give it to a desk adjuster that is in Iowa or Alaska, or it doesn't matter, and they can virtually walk the job and see what the problem is. Once that report is done, it is handed to the asset owner, and that asset owner and perhaps the legal team use that report to determine what repairs need to be made. One of the things I think, and I don't remember if it was you that touched on it, sir, but one of the things is a misconception is that it's the Wild West when it comes to pricing. That is the farthest thing from the truth. There's a program, Exactware it's called, and Exactimate is the program that tells people that work on damaged homes how much they're allowed to charge. They don't get to make these numbers up. It's here's what we're going to pay you. Oftentimes with a modifier if there are material shortages, or in the case of, say, if you're in Puerto Rico, like I know you've done work in Puerto Rico, or in the islands like I have, there's a modifier for getting the materials there. But it's cut and dry. Here's what we're going to pay per square foot for sheetrock. But the interesting thing is they also pay to take that fire extinguisher down and put it back up. So every little thing is covered. So if you use it properly, you're going to get paid properly, and no one gets to be the wild, wild west. That's just the way it is in this industry.
Harvey, you want to tell them that your process and, you know, when someone hires you, what your process, so they kind of understand?
Yeah, that sounds good. I just want to touch on one more thing about Ken, is that it is so important that's why we love to use Ken, and we love to use engineers that write reports for the roof, even though we rely on our contractors who are going to do the actual job. When Ken's talking about a third party, it's great to have, you know, like someone without a dog in the fight, right? So when we go to court on these cases and someone cross-examines Ken or an engineer that we hire, it doesn't matter to them. Like they go, here's the scope. This is what we wrote up. We're not getting paid any more, any less if you give this to us. You get it? So it just comes across differently as if the roofer is saying, you know, okay, here's how much it costs for me to build this, rather than a third party, you know, estimator or engineer that says, here's how much it should cost to do this project. And that's why I like using Ken. Yes, sir. Go ahead.
I think there should be a fourth person on your team.
Come on up.
No, what I think you really need, and you guys really addressed it quite well at the very beginning, is perhaps, especially in pre-planning for these things in advance, is have a person not part of the insurance company, okay, who can look at a policy for a homeowner. They have to be charged, so be it, okay, so that the homeowner is assured of getting the proper policy. For example, I had a situation, do I want to stick with a $1,000 deductible or do I want to do the 2% thing? And I said, give me the numbers for both. Well, $350 did not make any sense to go to 2%, but the average senior, I'm going to say, is someone, and I'm saying this because I ran a senior center up north, is someone who's basically lazy and thinks the world should be given to them. So they're missing out on an awful lot of advantages, and perhaps if there was a fourth member to your team who could advise a homeowner as far as, this is the policy this guy's got, they're going to look at it and say, hey, you really ought to take care of this, take care of this, take care of this, which would mean down the road, if they had to use that policy, perhaps your stuff would be a whole lot easier to get through.
That sounds good. Maybe next time we do a panel, we can bring in an agent, an insurance agent that can help answer questions like that. I have a good friend that does that, and he's been extremely helpful. Like the law that I touched on earlier about the non-renewal, what they're doing now is instead of dropping people or non-renewing them, they're saying, we're not going to non-renew you, but your new premium is outrageous. So, it's like, okay, you didn't quit, you're fired, or whatever it is, right? So we had a big community that their premium was like $265,000 a year. After the hurricane, it went up to 1.2 million. But the same insurance company was like, oh no, we're not non-renewing you, but here's your new premium, of course, which they could not afford. But going back to Paul's question, the way that we work is when we're brought in, even though we are all a team and we all work for the asset owners, we're all separate also. And so generally what happens is we get referrals, and then we speak to the clients and go through some information and get them all signed up. Now, this is another thing that they changed the law on last year, and I don't want to get too complicated into this, but for many years here in Florida, there's a thing called the fee shifting statute, and it goes like this. If you have a dispute with your own insurance company and you're forced to hire an attorney to represent you, if you win your case, then the insurance company has to pay your attorney's fees and costs. So the media and the insurance industry made it a big deal, like one-way attorney's fees. It's not that. It's fee shifting. So anyway, they took that away from you last year. So everybody in the state of Florida, before we used to be able to go and say, look, we need $50,000 to replace this roof. Then we need our attorney's fees on top of that, because if we take money out of the recovery that we get for you, now you're paying out of pocket for that. So anyway, anything after, the beginning of this year, after your policy renews, we can't get attorney's fees for you anymore. We can, any Ian claims that you have pending, we can request attorney's fees on top of the money that we get for you. But let's say we have another hurricane this year and we have to represent you for a roof. We can't do it before, where we used to go we collect the whole amount and give it all to you. Now we're going to have to charge a percentage of that, and then people are just going to have to come out of pocket, which is, it's going to, like, we haven't even felt it yet, but they changed a bunch of the laws last year that will hurt every homeowner in the state of Florida. Yeah. Anyway, so everything that we do is a contingency. I pay for everything up front. Testing wise, I can't pay for, this is a great example. So I could pay for Ken to come out and do an assessment for me, but I can't pay for the remediator to come out and actually do the work, because he's helping me with my case and providing the information, the evidence that we need. But anyway, so we pay for all of that, and then and we don't get paid unless we win your case for you.
I'm going to comment on the power of the team because I think the operative word here is power. So not only do we have the power of your expertise and your representation, but their knowledge and your connections and resources. That's what it's all about, the resources. So thank you for that.
I think I just also want to expand on the team concept. Paul's spoken about part of it. This whole insurance process is very complex. There are a lot of complications in there, and some of the stuff is counterintuitive. So you have to be really careful when dealing with the insurance company. And I think the advantage of a team, like Paul, a lot of roofers only do roofing. Then you have to go and find your expert in mold, and then you have to find a fencing person and a this and a that. And the advantage of working with a team is who understands insurance is really, really important, because you're only really vetting one person, and they have vetted everybody else. So you don't have to deal also with 20 different contractors. You're dealing with one contractor who has all these links to people who are real experts in those fields. I want Ken just to comment on something that I think is kind of counterintuitive, and that is wind-driven rain comes in, and then you see a leak on your ceiling, and you think that was clean water because it was rain that was driven in through your vents or however it got there. But that's actually not clean water. And so just dealing with this, it's very complicated, and you need to work with somebody whose interests are aligned with your interests. The insurance company's interests are not aligned with yours. Their battle is to try and pay you as little as possible, and you get hurt in that process. And so I think, Ken, if you can just kind of comment on that counterintuitive, it must be clean water because it's coming in from the rain.
Sure. So, Category 1 water is in the water bottles that we're drinking from. Category 1 is considered potable water, drinking water, bathing water. Category 2 water is water that is significantly contaminated, whether biological or debris. And Category 3 water has things in it that can hurt you. So why did I define that? I defined that because the IICRC S500, which I've mentioned is the Bible of wet buildings in our business, specifically denotes those categories. So we've all been kids and been outside, and either it's been snowing and you let a snowflake go on your tongue, or you got a little rain in there, and no big deal. But that's rain. So rain is not always rain. You get 120 to 150 mile an hour horizontal wind going across the bays and across to your neighbors and everything else. It's going to pick up nasty things. I'll give you an example. I was in South Carolina at that storm a couple of years ago, and it was a huge condominium, and the contamination was ridiculous. It was more than we expected. We expect when water comes in to a building assembly, it's going to pick up, and let's just be frank, inside the walls are not pristine clean. There's bugs in there and debris of all kinds and just things that settle out. When the water mixes with that, it's not going to be Category 1 water anymore. So South Carolina, I couldn't figure out why this condominium, even on the top floor, was just sewer indicators everywhere. What in the world? Well, I learned something. I didn't know that South Carolina is one of the largest pork producing states in the United States. So I did a wind study, which we do often. I did a wind study and found out that the hurricane drove winds in excess of 100 some miles an hour across the settlage ponds. I'm saying that to be nice. It's the pig poo. And drove that, picked it up, and miles away deposited it all over this neighborhood. So this rain that comes from a hurricane is not the stuff that you go out and let a snowflake fall on your tongue. This is nasty stuff. We all saw in this last hurricane in Tampa Bay, where'd the water go? It went on out, didn't it? Well, when it came back in, those winds picked up all that nasty stuff off the bottom of the bay and blew it all over the place. And if you had a hurricane-created opening in your home, it came in. Now, maybe it was just the sheetrock and it looked a little bit dark. And your brother-in-law, who's an expert on everything, said, just paint that with Kills. It'll be just fine. Well, that's of course wrong. But secondly, let's think about where the water came from. Then let's think about how it got in. And if you can see it on this side of the sheetrock, imagine what the other side looks like. I jokingly say sometimes we'll open up a wall and find out it looks like a velvet Elvis. It's black and furry and nasty. Well, I don't know if you know this, but homes breathe. What's inside the wall, air-wise, gets outside the wall. Every time a window or a door is closed, the barometric pressure at some level changes, and it's called wall aspiration. So what's in the wall breathes into and back out into the home, and that has to do with every sort of component, including can lights, everything that's an intrusion through that wall. So that nastiness that you can only see as your brother-in-law's kills fix could very well be a huge mold colony or a bacterial colony, and that is just festering there that eventually could enter your breathable airspace, whether viable or non-viable, and hurt you with endotoxins, exotoxins, and mycotoxins. And these are things that make people deathly ill. I mentioned that I knew a person who actually died from that, and that's a true story. So there's that.
There's that. Any other questions? Awesome. Let's talk about, the stories are dramatic. There's no doubt about that. Let's talk a little bit about the PPE. And that's something very dear to Paul's heart.
So PPE after a hurricane. So I can tell you a quick story. A lot of people, and I don't know if you've seen this in the news, but down in Fort Myers Beach, and people were cleaning up their properties and putting debris on the side of the road. Some people ended up getting flesh-eating bacteria. And that goes into what Ken was just talking about, Category 3 water, and getting into properties while it gets on the material that people are moving and putting on the sides of the roads. That is the wrong place to put it, but there's no other place to put it. So it's, the towns probably need to figure out a better way of handling that, but it's all Category 3. It's got mold. It's got all kinds of other things in there that Ken could tell you about that's above me. But anyways, so what happens is when we were talking about earlier about contractors coming here and churches are one of the biggest things that get volunteers to come out and help the community. So one of the things Diane and myself have made some videos on this is because I came up from Naples to Fort Myers to a church that a friend of mine said, hey, would you come and volunteer? And I said, sure. They had 100 different people going to 100 different homes a day, and what they were giving out were masks, drywall masks, and just gloves, not cut-resistant gloves, not rubber gloves. Didn't tell you to wear protective boots so you couldn't get nails and stuff, and sent us out to these people's homes to help them. Well, the home I went to, matter of fact, was in Bonita Springs on one of the inlets, and it was actually a modular home. And I go into the home, I have the mask on, and I know better. I've been doing this for a long time. But I said, let me go into the home real quick and see. So I get in the home, and the subfloor is falling in. The water line was as high as that picture, or that piece of paper right here on the wall. This poor lady was trying to save everything in her home. At that point, the Category 3 water had touched. There was nothing to save. And she at the time, and I was in there for 5 minutes, and I said, hey, everybody, we need to remove ourselves from this home. Let's go outside and have a conversation. So we get out there, my eyes twitching, I'm getting a headache, I'm getting sick to my stomach because the mold and the bacteria that was in there will get you really sick. So I had to explain to this lady that her house was probably needing to be knocked down. There's nothing else that could be done. So where I'm going with this with PPE is you want to make sure that if you are helping people and volunteering and for your own good at your own properties, that you get cut-resistant gloves. You get boots that you're not going to get nails driving through. You're going to wear long, jeans or long your pants, and you might even want to wear protective over your arms, but you want to make sure that your hands, and then you have the correct face mask, respirator, N95 mask maybe. I want to go lower than an N95 mask because you're going in these places that are going to get you sick. So we really like to touch base, educate the community about these things for the next storm. I see, again, the news after this happened in Fort Myers Beach, I believe there was 28 cases of flesh-eating bacteria from people cleaning up and helping other people. So that's one of the big things that we talk about PPE for. I don't know if Harvey or Ken have something that they would like to elaborate on that.
I do. So PPE is personal protective equipment, by the way. That's what that acronym means. So the most important piece of PPE is your mask. I have a different bent on N95s. During COVID, I was part of a team that studied, not that I was for or against masks, we were studying the effects of masks. And we came up with the consensus that wearing an N95 mask, assuming that that was going to protect you, is like taking a handful of beach sand and throwing it at a chain link fence and expecting it to stop the beach sand. It's just simply not going to work. At a very minimum, if you're going to enter an establishment or a home that is contaminated, you should have a half-face mask. 3M makes them. They're $39 from Home Depot. They have 2 filters. You can get them. The purples are for particulate, like mold, and the ones that are white on the outside with charcoal filters, those are the ones that are really good. They're a little more expensive. They breathe well. I can't stress how important it is not to breathe in these contaminants. Even if the house is dry, now here's the thing. Just because the house is dry and the mold, if it's mold, is not growing anymore, doesn't mean it's not dangerous. If we could see a picture of a mold spore, it's roughly this thousands and thousands of times bigger, but imagine this, like an egg shape. The exterior of that looks like it has little lightning bolts on it. Those are mycotoxins. They're the actual toxin that's in a mold. The reason that that's there is that molds fight, like every other plant, for food sources. These toxins are not always toxic to people, depends on the mold, but sometimes they are. They're actually designed to kill other molds and other things that eat mold. So why is that important? If that mold is not growing, that spore, which is a seed, if you will, is still in the air. If you inhale that, you're going to get that through the cilia and your nasal passages in your throat. You're going to put that down into your stomach. With enough of that toxin, it's going to make you deathly ill. Depending on what the mold itself is, some of it is carcinogenic. So I'm really big on having proper PPE when it comes to inhalation. And the second thing, which is equally as important but generally not something that people think about, is if you're doing this work, and whether you have gloves on, which you should or you don't, keep your hands off your face. Don't wipe your eyes. Don't put your fingers in your mouth. Don't scratch your nose, because these things are not only can you ingest them, but they're transdermal, which means that simply getting them on your skin will absorb it. With enough of that, you'll not only have allergic reactions, but sometimes you'll have toxic reactions. And I've personally seen this in the 20-some years I've been in it. So homeowners that are wading through knee-deep floodwaters with no protection, and they have no gloves, and they're picking up this stuff that's probably full of every neighborhood sewer that's come into to this nasty flood, they're just asking to become ill. And I'm maybe not old enough to say this, but like my granddad used to say, if you don't have your health, you don't have anything. And so first thing is protect yourself and others when it comes to a storm.
I want to make sure that we answered everybody's questions here today. If there are any more questions online, is anyone monitoring that? And we just wanted to, I think we're ready to wrap everything up. We have to be out of here in a few minutes, but my question to the rest of the panel is there anything else that you think will be helpful to let homeowners and asset owners know, of how to deal with either before, during, or after the storm?
One last thing that I'll bring up real quick is another reason why you want to have a team of experts is we talk all the time about law changes, what's going on. One of the biggest things that we haven't touched base on that I just want to touch base briefly on is between Marco Island and the Sarasota, we pretty much have had a couple hurricanes in the last 5 years. Irma and Ian have touched parts of this area. A lot of people have not had anybody inspect their windows and doors, and a lot of the windows and doors are no longer any good. Reason being is pressures. They will probably not pass a pressure test. We have found this year after the storm in Irma, we started finding a lot of the windows and doors, again, why you want to have a team, so we talk, that when we do these inspections of your properties, that you have a company that's doing what they're supposed to. And we're finding, I want to say about 75% of the windows and doors we're inspecting are bad due to Hurricane Ian. So one of the things that I want to say is, it's fine to have a roofer come and look at your house, but he's not looking at the rest of your house. It's fine to have a restoration company come in your house, but he's not looking at the rest of your house. That's where we come in at Renegade Roofing Consulting and Storm Consultants. And you can hire us as a consultant, or you can hire us to do the work. There's 2 different options. We can talk later about that. But again, the team atmosphere, we can go to Harvey, find out any law changes. I can go to Ken, and then we have meetings to talk about this. So when we go and inspect a property for any client, commercial or residential, we're giving the best inspection that we can give and thorough inspection for you guys.
And I'll just, go ahead.
Just a quick question with the windows. When you're talking about like 75%, what exactly do you mean by just saying like the windows and doors are bad? Like what's happened to them that make them go bad, or why it should be a concern?
So with the wind speeds and the pressures from the winds, windows have wind and pressure ratings. And most of these windows have exceeded both wind and pressure. If you've noticed, you've had leaks come in through your windows during the storm. If your windows aren't going up properly, there's a lot of things that we go through. There could be condensation in between the pans. The seals could be damaged. What you need to have a professional come and inspect them. I can't sit there and tell you everything that they're all bad. But again, approximately 75% of the windows that I've inspected this year, and that's over 100 properties, the windows and doors have been bad. If you notice that your doors are warped or not closing the way they did, or your windows aren't closing the way they did, that's a good indicator. Or if you've noticed that you have condensation between the window, or you have leaks during the storm, just like you did through your roof vents, those are good indicators that the windows have failed.
Other questions? What do you got there?
I just want to mention in closing that if you either have a property or you're a home watch professional that's taking care of property and you've had storm damage, whether it's large or small, now is the time before we have another storm to get that looked at. And our team is a team that will be glad to help you with that. Let's find out what you have before you have another incident, if in fact we do. And let me just speak to this. If you're a homeowner and you've been experiencing unusual physical problems, physical maladies after the storm, I can't speak to your health, but we can speak to the health of your home. The most important thing is to have a healthy place to live, because we want to be healthy. So if you find that that's been an issue with you or your loved ones, my suggestion is to reach out and let us help you.
The last thing that I would add is, whether you think you have a problem or don't, if you were in this area, you definitely need to get an inspection done by Renegade and by Paul. You know, they're going to come out and check the roof at least, just to make sure. If everything's great, then you're okay. If something's bad, at least you'll know that and be able to correct the problem, whether it's a replacement or repairs or whatever it is. But Paul and Renegade will be honest with you and tell you what you're looking at.
And one last thing I wanted to say to people is, if you're still dealing with the insurance company and your repairs aren't done, or if they are done and you're still getting problems with them paying you, underpayments, delays, denials, that's a perfect time for you to call Harvey and get with Harvey. Also, even if you have a public adjuster, Harvey works with public adjusters, can take your claim over from a public adjuster, because a lot of things that are happening with the insurance companies, they're stonewalling. And again, I can tell you this from 25 years experience, and also used to work for a couple insurance companies on the other side, working for them, is, again, I've never seen it this bad, of the delays and denials of what they're doing and taking. So I cannot stress enough. We're almost 10 months into the storm. Thankfully, we have 2 years with Hurricane Ian, but you want to get it done sooner than later and get with Harvey. And one last thing I want to touch base with the law changes, just so everybody's aware, with the law changes that came about, we have 2 years with Hurricane Ian. Let's think about that. The next hurricane that hits, you have 1 year to file a claim and an additional 6 months to do a supplement. in my opinion, in professional in 25 years, there is no way possible if we had another hurricane like Ian that they're going to be able to settle all those claims in that time frame. And they have proven that with Hurricane Ian. So one thing I would tell all the property owners and all the citizens of Florida, you need to go back and fight that law change and have it reverted back to a minimum of 2 years and get your attorney's fees paid for, because a lot of property owners don't understand that and didn't see this coming, how the laws changed and it really affected everybody.
Gentlemen, thank you. There's been a wealth of information, and now I know very clearly that hoping there's not going to be another hurricane is not the best plan, because it's not a matter of if, it's going to be a matter of when. And a tropical storm can be just as bad, and every other kind of damage that can happen in a home, like mold and likewise. It's been a wealth of information. I hang around with professionals who are nerds at what they do. So with a loving heart, I call you three of the nerdiest gentlemen that I know. And also three of the most well-connected gentlemen that I know. Thank you for your time and your expertise.